Then the next report is the biannual discipline and attendance report. So I'd ask our Assistant Principal of Student Affairs, Dave Manning, come up. And this begins on page 9 in your board packet.
Good evening, Dave.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, Dave.
Okay, today we're going to review first semester data on attendance and discipline. And looking at some of that data, our attendance came in around 95.35% for first semester, which is a little bit higher than where we were at last year, 95.12. And then if you look back, I did kind of an historical since 14, and we're almost a point there up. So we're pretty happy about where we came in at for overall attendance. I know it's the highest I've seen looking at data here in some time. So first semester, we're on a good streak here. We want to continue it going forward. Total attendance and reason by month, we separated this category out by average excused absences, and those are averages per day, and then average cuts, and then early dismissal, average per period per day. And if you look at the total semester average per period per day for average excused absences, the total is 42.02, which is down from 55.2. If you look at December, I think a mild December helped us out a little bit. So did some sicknesses in the building. We had better health in December, so that's why we had less excused absences, which is a positive. We had more kids in the building and a significant decline from where we were at last year, so we're pretty happy about that number as well. So more kids in the building, better weather helped us out with that. The cuts were up a little bit. October was a month that we highlighted. And looking at our data, this year we've been focusing our efforts on a pocket of students that have had some behavioral and emotional things going on, and where they were either leaving the building early or coming to school and then leaving and things like that. So that pocket of students really affected where we're at with our numbers. We continue to work with our PRIDE program there with some interventions with our deans and our school safety liaison officer, things like that. And I'm going to get to what we're doing on the truancy side of things in a minute. But that's why our cuts were up a little bit from where we're at last year.
So I didn't understand your point.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain it again?
Sure. So
Just
cuts.
plain terms.
Yeah. So a cut would be a student who arrives to campus, is either in attendance for one of our 7 periods, and then decides to leave the building for that period or for that day.
Okay.
And so those cuts can add up if it's a number of periods on top of each other, and or just one period. And so what we were seeing this year, it's a pocket of students that have IEPs or individual education plans that we're working with that are receiving some social emotional support from us, but had significant cuts that added up this year.
Versus last year?
Versus last year,
And the
correct.
year before, because it's gone up a day.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
So Dave, what do? They just walk out?
correct. Yeah, they walk out, and then we call home, and then the next day we see them, and then we put them through some interventions, whether that be one-on-one time or an alternate day assignment or some social work intervention or what have you. So we look at the resources and what we can allocate to them, but those have added up for those students.
Can you explain, during the day, because we worry about safety of our students, can students walk out any door of this building?
Yeah, our doors are locked from the exterior.
Right.
On the interior, obviously, they're open, and kids, when they do walk out, we're not going to stand in front of them. If they want to walk out, we're going to talk to them. We're going to try to intervene. But if
So
they
do we
decide to walk
know
out
every time a student leaves the building during the day? Because we have a closed campus during the day.
through attendance, yes, and teachers are to take attendance the first 15 minutes of each class.
Okay.
So then, once we see that they leave, or typically in these situations, which we'll see here, and I'll show you in our suspension data, that cut, usually we're notified if it's within the PRIDE program that student's looking to leave or is going to leave. And then we'll kind of intervene, and that may end up being like a verbal
So we
thing.
know when
So
every student leaves the building.
with this
But we
program,
don't
we do.
stop them.
Correct.
Not with every student. I mean, if a student were to sneak out, there may be a student that goes out a side door that we don't catch until after the teacher takes the 15 minutes of
But do we
attendance.
know if people are leaving through our side doors? Because they also could hold the door and let somebody in the side door, right?
Yeah, and
So, I mean, again, maybe oversimplifying this, but
yeah.
I'm just as concerned if people are just willy-nilly coming and going out of our building, we need to know that, don't we? And it
Yeah.
seems like we could stop them if if we wanted to. And again, you have to decide whether we do not, but the other alternative is somebody just holds the door open and lets somebody in.
Yeah,
So how are we monitoring people coming in and out of the building during the day?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, we installed a 32-inch screen down in our welcome center, and it has up all of our cameras, all of our surveillance throughout the building. We've added cameras since then, and so they get a good view as to all of our exterior doors.
Okay.
And so they can view that anytime. We also have 6 security on the floor at any time. And then recently, within the last, I want to say 2 weeks before break, I printed out all of our students on early release. They have now that information on their ID cards. So before they leave for the day, after 6th period, they need to show that ID to our security who are at our main entrances.
Oh, okay.
So that's cut down on some of our cuts as well. So, we're shoring that up. Right now, we can't stand by every exterior door, so they will
understand.
find the cracks here and there. But we're hoping that as we unveil this, this program with the IDs going forward, that it will cut down on the cuts.
Okay.
So,
Hey, David, I noticed November was really high last year and this year. Do you have any idea why November's so high?
it's always there. And
Just
and
curious.
I dug into that and I looked at it, and I thought maybe it was for families leaving early, but that wasn't the case. We kind of uncovered that, and I don't know. It could be doctor's appointments. It could be this kid's getting sick here and there. It's just and we're after the honeymoon phase too. We're into the school year. It's the heart of the semester. If a kid gets a sniffle or two and needs to stay home, that may happen. And so that's where we see that there. I'll get to this later as well, but something that we've really attacked this year with our nurses and our psychologists is putting attendance first. We've created an attendance webpage for our parents to view. We put up protocols that I reviewed with the nurse that go over, when do I, because sometimes parents need this, when do I call my kid in, and what are the factors that my kid's presenting, whether it's a sickness or whatnot, that would make me call my student out of class or out of school that day. And that's never been provided in kind of a visual example online before, and so we presented that this year. We not only put that in a district newsletter, but we also put that on our webpage and put that under the parent tab. So that information is present and available now too, and that has helped, I think, going forward. And you look at our December attendance, we had less people calling in December, and that's when that newsletter went out. So I'm hoping, that's hopefully was a part of that, but I'm encouraged that we're going to continue to stay in front of this Attendance Matter initiative with all forces here, with our psychologists, our deans, myself.
That's one other question on this first page. Is there a 4th category average unexcused absences too?
I think that would just go into cuts, unexcused.
Okay, because the reason I asked is we have roughly 1,600 students, right?
A little bit.
1620?
So I'm
Yes,
do the
or at
simple
1600,
math.
yes.
So 10% is 160, right? And 5% is 80,
Yeah.
right? So, but if I add, we set our average at, well, that's last year, but it's 95%. But again, these numbers appear to be generally better than last year, except for the cuts. But if you add them all up, you only get 45, 46, like 47 kids absence, but if 5% is 80. So I forgot to ask the question until you said something. I would have sent you a note, but
Sure.
it seems like there's a difference in numbers between the overall attendance and the total attendance by reason. Or is it because we're halfway through the year or something?
Well, I think too, a cut doesn't necessarily mean that student's going to be out for the entire day.
Well, I
And
know,
so-
but that would mitigate, that would say that it's even further off. Because if 5% is 80 students, you're only coming up with like 45.
Yeah, so this data is pulled right from our database, and so it's generally tracked through our teacher attendance. So when
I
it's,
apologize for not asking this advance. I think somebody should look and see why
We'll look
we're
into
only
it.
coming out with 42 here and we're saying overall it's 5%.
There could be some other students just medical and.
That's why I'm wondering, that's why I said, does it
Right.
not include unexcused or something?
yeah, there is that category out there, whether
You might
it's
want to look at that. that's
vacations
all.
or hospitalizations. Correct.
Sorry about that, Dave, because I forgot to ask that.
I will check into that.
Okay, Dave, you were going through some of the questions you received in regards to the things you're changing or doing, initiatives and continuation.
Yeah, so we talked about the attendance webpage there. The truancy, There's a question asked about the truancy tickets that we wrote as kind of a historical here. Typically, we've been kind of averaging 16, 17. Last year we wrote 23, and this year we wrote 27 truancy tickets for students that have over that 5% attendance percentage on their, I guess, just within their data, and something that we see, you know, after doing multiple interventions with these students, whether that's one-on-one or whether that's in-person meetings or going out to their house and doing home visits. If we're not making any traction whatsoever on that, then we're going to get out there, we're going to utilize the resources that we have with Riverside PD and issue some of those tickets. So a student that cuts as well, that leaves the building for that day, could be issued a truancy ticket as well. So you see kind of the correlation with their cuts and the truancy tickets too. And we talked about the cut, so that was all the questions there. One thing I will note on the last section of the attendance is our tardies. It's been a huge initiative since I came here 4 years ago. We started off at 16 students average per period that were out of class, not in time. And we cut that down in half in 4 years. And so now, I mean, that's 8 kids that are in class ready to go, which speeds up the time that our teachers have to get their instruction out and ready for our kids. So we're pretty excited about how that's going, and we're going to continue to battle the tardies for our kids.
Discipline.
All right, our next report, discipline, it goes over several categories. A couple on that left-hand side are the alcohol, drug possession, or smoking, fighting, disrupting the learning environment, gang, theft, weapon possession, and inappropriate or non-compliant behavior. And then we look at that as an average through the months of the school year in the first semester. And alcohol, we had 0 offenses, 0 suspensions for alcohol. Drug possession and smoking, this is a topic that we'll get into here in a second. We had 10. And drug possession and smoking has kind of shifted in what we used to see a lot in the building. 10 years ago, you'd see cigarettes. You'd see students that would actually have leafy marijuana on them and things like that. When we suspend a student for smoking or a drug possession, it's for something that's a legal substance. So it's going to be a marijuana or THC oil or something like that. So these aren't vape, necessarily e-cigarette suspensions. We typically don't suspend for that offense. We do some alternative interventions for that. So what we saw first semester, we had 6 students that had actual devices on them with marijuana oil in it, which is a trend right now with our population with students across the country. And then we had 4 students that are actually under the influence that smoked. So that's where you got the 10 students and the 10 offenses, and those are suspensions. Going into fighting, and I'll come back to that in a second. Fighting, we had a drop down of 7 compared to 14, which is really good. And I think I contribute that not only to our security team, just being present and aware and stopping before it escalates into a physical altercation, but also our staff is really present in our hallways, 1 through 7 throughout the day. So I really appreciate their efforts as well.
Did you have a melee one day last year too?
We did.
A whole bunch of kids got in the fight.
Yeah, we had a couple of kids get into an altercation last year. So, disrupting learning environment, bullying, intimidation. We had 5 there. 0 gang suspensions. 1 student was suspended for theft. 0 weapon suspensions. Inappropriate and non-compliant behavior. This has increased a little bit from where we're at last year. Last year we had 9. This year we had 18 total offenses with 15 students. So 1 student or a couple students had a repeat suspensions there. Again, we're working with a pocket of students here that either had inappropriate or non-compliant or challenging behavior towards the administration or to staff, and that's where we've seen that increase. So how do we counteract that? That's really through getting in there and working with our social workers and being creative, thinking outside the box. There's a question about a leadership day. I took students that had 5 or more referrals, 10 or more tardies, 5 or more absences. I put them all together and I did a leadership training day on campus here with them. So that's the type of out-of-the-box stuff that we need to continue to do with these guys is let's get them connected to the school. Let's put leadership type training in front of them to see if we can spark a connection, whether that's through an academic thing or an extracurricular. But that's going to be our focus going forward, and we have this pocket of students that we're working with on that end. Questions coming back from that report here. So total is 41 for the offenses and 38 students, which is on par with where we were at last year.
So 3 students got suspended twice.
Roughly.
One got suspended 3
Several
times.
So going back to the vape, and that's a trend right now with our young students across the country, like I alluded to. We've worked with Riverside Police Department on not just ticketing these students and having them go to court and seeing a judge and then looking at community service or whatever that judge hands out to them, but more hitting them in a pocketbook and knowing that if kids come here, Riverside's going to give them an actual ticket, where it's going to be $100 for any type of electronic cigarette device, or a $150 ticket for any type of card or any device with marijuana oil in it. And so that could be up to a $250 fine for a student that brings that on campus. We made sure that our students were well aware of that in our grade level assembly meetings with them. But this is something that we needed to get in front of. Our deans went out to an annual dean conference and we're asking our colleagues, what are you doing out there? What are we doing to combat this? And a lot of them didn't have any answers to it. A lot of them, it's just the same old tried and true. It's the suspension and then the fine or the court appearance. And not only did we do that, but we're doing the ticketing as well, but we're also, I've done posters in the dean's office. We did the district newsletter. Staff, we just did a staff training at our last institute, our staff faculty training day, where we just presented to our staff, what are you looking like, what are kids presenting to the classrooms in the building, what are kids doing now, because it's completely different, like I said, than when we were at 10 years ago. The health office had some related information about the harming effects that this has for our students. We're going to be doing some discipline articulation because I think we really need to hit our 8th graders hard before they come into our building this year or next year, because that's where it's present right now is in our middle schools as well. We're also, again, going to be really present with material throughout the building about the harming effects to it. And then our security staff does bathroom checks, and they scan those bathrooms. So that's where it's being done at. It's being done in places that are not in a classroom, not in an open area. They're in contained areas such as bathrooms. So we go in, we scan it, so that it kind of gives us a little data as to when we scan those and then when kids are doing things. So we're continuing to stay on top of that as well.
So can I ask, is that the Riverside Police Department that they issue a citation and then they pay the fine?
Correct.
Police department?
Yeah, it goes through a local adjudicator at the police department. We also have been working with Brookfield as well. We got some information that students were getting some of these electronic cigarettes from a local store and things like that, and we've worked with them and they have intervened and helped us out. So it's been a good relationship with both departments, and it's something that we're facing. It's present, and it's a thing that we're always gonna have to stay on top of.
Have you reached out to the feeder schools? Do you know if it's a big problem in their junior highs?
It has been, yes. Yeah, and we need to do a little bit more, and I think that discipline articulation that we were talking about with the deans, that's going to be occurring here soon. We need to do more of that with them.
A couple of the local police departments are also doing some operations for local businesses who are selling the vape pens to minors, correct, and e-cigs to minors?
Yes, yep. A couple other questions here. We've increased our security a little bit. Just to shore up some of our doors. Security has been a big thing for us this year. We've enhanced our lockdown protocols, and we want to ensure that we have safety and have security present not only during the morning kind of rush, but the afternoon as well. So we've extended hours. Our hours now are 7 to 5:30, and our hours are kind of that way prior to adding another person on. Just we shifted his hours a little bit. So now we have more security presence after school now, until 5:30, where we only had one person on until 5:30 previously, which has helped out a lot.
Just with the size of the building and all the activities we have going on, we extended one security member's for part-time. He's still part-time, but it's extended a few hours a day so that we have 2 people in the morning at 7 o'clock, one A and G, and then we have 2 people in the building afterwards, because we're a lot of students staying, going to different activities throughout the building, clubs, sports, practices, waiting for a practice to start. And so we needed some extra help with supervision after school as well.
And then we'll continue to do leadership training. There is a training coming up here at Addison Trail High School, so we're going to take 15 more students out, and I think that's important. And these are students that are heavily involved within various extracurriculars, so that they can come back and then increase the culture, increase the climate in which that these students are a part of. And so we want to continue to do that going forward. So we look forward to that conference here next month.
What the point you made on work with staff, unrelated positive incentives for students turning on in their phones prior to the start of class utilizing a hero system.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? I mean,
Sure. So
sounds good, but I don't know what it means.
we held an event in the fall with screenagers, and it was all about disconnecting from social media. And our students, with these phones in front of them, it triggers senses in our brain that are similar to a drug addict. And it's really hard for our kids to disassociate themselves from these cell phones, these devices. And so what we've done to counteract it a little bit is that we've purchased these cell phone parking lots that teachers can put by their desks. And it's just labeled 1 through 30, and then students can put their phone in these parking lots and then kind of like disconnect. And it gives them a reason to disconnect and focus in on their studies, which has been helpful. And it's kind of a voluntary thing, but students that do that get hero points from us. And then in turn, we do incentive days in the cafeteria. So if they have 15 points, they can come see me, and I'll give them a candy bar or a T-shirt.
That's what I thought it meant. I thought they weren't allowed to use their phones during class.
Yeah.
So I'm struggling with how we did this thing to make them follow the rules, and a lot of them, it's voluntary. So what is it, everybody else who doesn't do it on their phone, or what? I mean,
Yeah. So students.
doesn't it say in the student handbook they can't use their phone during class? I remember reading that.
Our handbook
So explain
expectation.
how this voluntary great thing we give them points for works versus the ones who don't turn them in if
Yeah.
they're using their phones during class.
Well, the handbook expectation is to be put in away and stored away during
Right.
instructional hours, right? And so what we're seeing is this is always the connection, whether it's in your pocket, whether it's in your backpack. I want to check it. It's that temptation to look at your phone. If it buzzes, it vibrates, if you hear it. So we want to take that completely away from you.
That part I get.
Yeah.
What about the ones that's buzzing and vibrating? If they pick it up and use it, what do we do something about that?
Yeah, so that's an internal, that's more of a staff managed thing,
Okay.
that it's a managed behavior in the classroom.
Okay.
And then if that's a defiant thing that continues, then that turns into a referral that comes up to the dean's office. But that's more of like an in-class management technique that teachers
And
are.
we can't put a cell blocker because of an emergency, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's unfortunate. You should look into figure out a way around that.
Yeah, I don't know if.
Right.
But kids can use their cell phones at other times, like in study
but
halls and
during
in lunch
class.
and in between class
Correct.
periods, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I've seen, I mean, in the middle school where I'm at, sometimes it's 2 to 1. Like kids are creating on their device and they're looking up information on their phone. So like if they're using them for good and not evil, like I see no reason why they shouldn't be able to have 2 to 1. It's just my
If
opinion.
they're doing that.
Right.
Who's doing that?
Well, if you give them meaningful work to do, they will do it. Kids want to learn and they want to create. And so if you give them meaningful work to do, they will do it. If you give them,
That's why we spent all the money on the Chromebooks, isn't it? We give them devices to
Yes.
do their meaningful work,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah, any other questions that were submitted, Dave?
That would be
I
it.
don't think so.
Does anybody else have any other
Any
questions for Dave?
questions? Questions? Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Good
your
work.
report. Kristen, anything else for you to add? Thank you.